Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Not Your Average Josh back here for another movie review, and today I am reviewing the new movie starring Owen Wilson that comes out April 7th. Paint is also directed by Britt McAdams. Before I get into my review, I do want to say hit that like button and that comment button as well. That's very much appreciated. If this is your first time watching any of my videos, you can hit that subscribe button as well. You can follow me on TikTok, you can get me on Snapchat, where I post content similar to this, but for the most part, my content will be here on this YouTube channel, Not Your Average Josh. So again, I appreciate all the support that I do get. So let's get into this review of Paint. Owen Wilson portrays Carl Nargle, Vermont's #1 public television painter who is convinced he has it all: a signature perm, custom van, and fans hanging on his every stroke. Until a younger, better artist steals everything and everyone Carl loves. Now, if you don't know, this movie is loosely based on the real-life person Bob Ross, who was a painter who also was on television as well, most notably known for his landscapes and things of that nature. But the key word here is loosely. I'm not a person who is very familiar with Bob Ross. I think there was a Netflix documentary of sorts, I think, a while back, or something on Netflix about Bob Ross, and I never got around to seeing that. I did kind of want to. And actually, funny enough, it was pretty ironic because I knew this movie was coming out. I had heard about it, but the day before I went to go see this screening, it was actually the mystery movie of the month for Regal. Me and my grandma were actually watching an episode where Bob Ross, or a couple episodes of Bob Ross, painting one of his famous paintings, and it was just random because we never watched this. Like, we honestly never watched it. It was just a random day where she just happened to be watching when I came over to spend time with her. It was really crazy the next night for the mystery movie, for this movie to come on, and I was very interested and intrigued in it the moment I first saw the trailer. It did look very kind of crazy, wonky, just a little quirky. But the minute I saw Owen Wilson as this role, as this character, seeing the trailer, I did not know that it was going to be a different character than actually Bob Ross. He's playing the character Carl Nargle, which is just funny in and of itself, that name. I did enjoy this movie for the most part. I have a few negatives that kind of stand out, just personal negatives for me, but I will get into that here in a little bit. Starting out with the positive, I guess I'll just go ahead and start with Owen Wilson. One thing I know for sure after watching this movie is Owen Wilson is the perfect casting for this particular role. There's just several scenes in this movie that just fall right into the pocket of what Owen Wilson is best at doing, his style of humor. He is having the time of his life, it seems, in this movie, and playing this quirky, kooky character, Carl Nargle, which is, again, it's an exaggerated version of Bob Ross, at least from what I can take from it. Again, someone who doesn't really know much about Bob Ross other than the general things that most people know. He plays a very just exaggerated, over-the-top guy who comes off as a little bit of a douchebag, full of himself, eccentric, of course. He's in this van, and he's rocking this perm, and he just feels like almost like a rock star in a way. I love all the little nuances in this movie that kind of pay homage in a way to Bob Ross, especially when the moments when the movie is showing him doing his television show, painting during it. He just, all the ways he would just kind of talk softly and as he painted. Now, the story of this movie, being focused obviously on Carl Nargle, focuses on this story of this new younger lady coming in. Her name is Ambrosia, played by Ciara Renee. She is, I guess, sort of the antagonist of this movie, if there is one. She comes in as this younger painter who has her own style in her own unique way, and where this is all taking place at is PBS. And you have PBS bringing in Ambrosia to kind of shake things up. The ratings are lower. They're starting to lose a little bit of interest in Carl Nargle and his painting. And so you have her come in. At times, I'm not going to lie, it was a little unlikable, her character. She kind of got on my nerves in a more of a personal way, not the actress. She was doing a really good job. Her character, she would just, you could tell she was being a little bit arrogant as the movie was going on. And it just seemed like she was trying to take Carl's place. And honestly, I was at first really kind of on Carl's side. Like, I didn't think he was doing much things wrong, and people were kind of getting upset with him just for the way that he acts, and I didn't think he was necessarily doing anything bad. So I was really on his side, and she just seemed like she was being very arrogant. Overall, she did really great as the actress. Tony, played by Stephen Root. If you know anything about Stephen Root, of course, he's always, I think, for me, really good in anything I see him in. He's always playing, a lot of times, a similar character in all of his movies that he's in. He's really the one who's in charge of overseeing the show, and now that Ambrosia is a part of. There's a lot of good back and forth with him and Owen Wilson in the movie, And I thought just overall, he really, this is, again, a kind of a perfect role for him as well. And really just the rest of the cast I thought was really well placed. You had Wendy McClendon as Wendy, Michaela Watkins as Catherine, who is really a kind of on again, off again romance in a way with Carl. Of course, Carl, as I mentioned, he is this kind of douchebag and a womanizer. And so he has pretty much dated everyone at the station, all the women there at the station. So that kind of was part of what leads to their little rocky relationship, I will say, again, without spoiling anything. Not that this movie garners too much spoilers, but yeah. You also had Lucy Fryer as Jenna. She is the new romantic, I guess, option for Carl in this movie. A younger girl that's working at the station, one of the newer ladies there. I just thought all the acting was well done for the most part. There was no one in this movie that stood out as something who did a poor job or anything. I thought they were all doing a really good job. And this movie is, for the most part, a comedy, really. There's some little drama elements to it. Of course, in most comedies, there's going to be those little moments anyway. But this definitely is heavily just a very quirky comedy. And at times, I will say the humor did border on awkward and cringe. There's like a couple scenes that really reminded me of like the Parks and Rec and The Office, the humor that's in those two shows. Especially The Office, though. That one, I did like The Office. I appreciated Parks and Rec more, but the Office, there would be times, especially certain episodes, that were just, the humor is so particular and just, it would just border on that cringe so much. And I felt that in this movie. In a lot of ways, there'd be scenes that I thought went a little too long at times, and we just sit on moments, and I get what they're going for. They're purposefully, it seems, going for these moments. Hard to watch at times, but when the humor does work in this movie, it works. Like, I was laughing out loud numerous times in this movie. There's a few times at least where the entire theater I was in was in an uproar of laughter, I will say. It was a fairly full theater, too. The humor works for the most part in this movie more than it doesn't. So that was definitely a plus. I was happy with that leaving the theater. And the story itself, really, again, it's a comedy movie, and there's not really a huge, heavy plot that's really gonna hit you hard or anything. This is a very simple plot, just kind of really following this kind of downfall of Carl Nargle at the station. Again, without spoiling anything, this whole kind of rivalry that ends up happening between Carl and Ambrosia. Of course, her, the new blood, if you will, trying to potentially could take over his spot. That's really where the main plot of this movie takes place, and you have that going on. And that really reminded me in a way immediately as I was watching it of Anchorman. If you've ever seen that movie, Veronica Corningstone and Ron Burgundy, their rivalry they had at the TV station there when she comes in and she ends up potentially maybe taking over his spot. That definitely reminded me a lot of the vibe that was going on here in this movie as well. The story was fine. This movie, again, is relying a lot on the humor, so the plot's only going to go so far. You know, it's not going to be, like I said, this deep thing. Other than that main plot, you're kind of just dealing with Carl. His arc is really him becoming a better person. And I thought they do a good job for the most part of having him change, and it seems like it felt realistic, like someone that would change. Like, he felt like he went through the proper steps to actually becoming a better person. The certain events that happened to him in this movie, I thought it, for the most part, worked. You know, it was good. It was good enough. Some of my negatives are, as I mentioned, the humor. Some of it just doesn't work for me. I think it does border on awkward and cringe at times. And another thing that was definitely noticeable and iffy for me was the sound at certain times. And I'll be interested to see when this movie comes out, if you're watching this review at all and you see it, what was your experience like? Because I don't know. I know with movies nowadays, they can change things right up to the actual release date. I don't know, since they released it at this Regal Mystery Movie Night, if it's already set and done, but there was parts in this movie where when people would make the sound whenever they were saying words, there's two sounds, the sh and the sh. Like, anytime those, there was like multiple scenes throughout the entire scene where it'd be very piercing. It was just very noticeable, and it was kind of piercing to the ears. And I worked on a movie. I don't know necessarily all the technical aspects. I don't know if the reverb is off, or if maybe the mic's too close, the volume's up too loud in certain scenes, the sound mixing, I don't know. It just felt very off to me, and I don't know if anyone else noticed it in my screen. I didn't talk to anybody or anybody that said anything, but that was also kind of an issue for me that stood out. It happened numerous enough times in this movie to where it was kind of a thing that I remembered. My last negative really didn't develop until about, I'd say, 45 minutes, an hour into this movie. This movie's only about a little over an hour and a half. And it was the time period in this movie, which is very confusing for me. like I said, the first about 45 minutes, this movie very much seems like they're trying to tell you that this time period is in the 70s or maybe early 80s or something. But then there's this one reference that happens in this movie. One of the characters talking to Carl, and they're having an argument, and you hear a honk outside where they're at, and she says, "Oh, that's my Uber." And I was merely like, kind of like dumbstruck, like, because this whole time I've been thinking this is in the 70s, I think, and then all of a sudden she references Uber, and then Carl just has this blank moment of silence, and then it says, oh, I don't know what that is, and it felt like just a very weird joke, and it immediately just confused me what the time period this is, and then from then on out, I just kept noticing these little references throughout the movie, or just like certain pictures that were taken where it just felt like there's like multiple pictures where it's like feels like it was a selfie taken from a phone. It's a little nitpicky thing, I guess, but I don't know. It just felt kind of very confusing. Like they wanted to use the time period for when it was convenient for them. It seemed like we're in the 70s for most of the movie because it fits the vibe of it, but then we want to make certain jokes, so we're going to just say fuck it and put in modern references and modern jokes and not care as much about that continuity. It's kind of a qualm for me, and not the biggest negative. It's more in the line of like nitpicky things, but it was something in the movie where, again, I'm just kind of confused about. Maybe someone can leave in the comments if you've seen this movie. Maybe you have a perspective on it where I just didn't catch, maybe I didn't get. It didn't ruin my experience. None of these negatives really ruined my experience, but they were just things that kind of sat with me as either mixed or negative things. I would suggest, if you're an Owen Wilson fan, I think this is going to be a perfect, fun movie for you to see. Hashtag Team Mobius. I love Owen Wilson in almost anything he's in, man. Going back to Wedding Crashers, I thought it worked for the most part. Again, it's such a humor-based movie that if this type of humor doesn't fit with you, you're going to probably have a tough time getting through it. And I will say an hour and a half, that was perfect for this. It didn't feel short. It felt like it was the exact time it needed to be. Because again, the humor didn't always work. So I think, and the story, again, it was good enough, but it wasn't like this amazing story where I wanted to just continue to eat up this movie and all the things going on. It was fun for what it is, and Britt McAdams, she did a good job directing. I would give it a recommendation. I think I had a good time with this, and I would check it out again for sure. But that's my main thoughts. I'm going to give Paint a 6.5 out of 10. This is a movie that I may forget in the moment, but anytime I see it pop up, maybe on a streaming service or something, I'll be like, oh yeah, I did like that movie pretty good. And again, it's not necessarily the best made movie. It's not going to be the most funny movie you've ever seen. It's not even going to be necessarily the most interesting idea you've ever seen. But I think for what it is, it does a pretty damn good job. But what do you think? Are you going to see this movie? Are you maybe one of the people that have already seen this movie? What do you think about it? If you haven't, are you interested in seeing it? Do you not give a shit? Any comments you want to leave, that's very much appreciated. Also, leave a like, hit that like button. And if this is your first time watching any of my videos, I'll hit that subscribe button as well. You can follow me on TikTok. You can add me on Snapchat, where I'll post content similar to this. But for the most part, my content will be here on this YouTube channel, Not Your Average Josh. So again, I appreciate all the support. Be looking for more videos very soon, and I'll talk to you guys later.